Anand, uh, and also a veteran in the monitoring and evaluation domain. He's also a core member at the National WOPE of India, that is Evaluation Community of India. So I think with that I will Dr. Shyam, is that okay to start the session?
Sure.
Sure, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I think I need to send you a new photo. I have a little, I've grown up a little in the sense that that photo is quite old. So next time, I think you update the new photo that I'll send it to you.
Sure, sir.
I'm really happy to be part of this winter school. And more than that, I'm happy to interact with young evaluators, the future of evaluation, monitoring and evaluation. It is, I always say that it's a field that we do not just look at an expertise, but we look at it as a movement, the movement where we need to engage more people because it's a movement of transparency and accountability. So we are taking monitoring and evaluation, not just in the field of interest, but something that everybody should be engaged. Even somebody who is not pursuing M&E as a field, developing evaluability approach probably is one of the objective of all the WOPs, and I would request and everybody that so that we start asking questions, sometimes tough questions, and try and make sure that the people remain accountable. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to introduce M&E not as a tool. Of course, we have been taking as a tool, as a method, but I think it's a time that we should start, we should start treating this as an area. Can you see can you see the PPT?
Yes, sir, we can see. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, is it still there?
Yeah, it is there. I think I can see the introduction to monitoring and evaluation, the first slide.
Thank you so much. Okay. So as I said that let's not limit it only to the tool, but let's take it in a vast area. It's a part of everything that we do in the development, and even I will go to the extent saying that in non-development technical areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the whole domain rather than as a toolkit. Let me just give you a bit brief why we are talking about M&E now more than 10 years or 15 years ago. We all know that, post Second World War, the entire world moved into, the reconstruction phase. Particularly a lot of countries who got independence, just like India and many others, they got into this phase of the reconstruction. So the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was the era to really look for the development alternatives to rebuild the country. And a lot of developing and underdeveloped countries saw development, funding coming in from the different parts of the world, multinational, multilateral agencies like World Bank, United Nations, etc. And we really invested a lot of funding into rebuilding the country internally. Overall, when we invested this for the last century, at the beginning of this century, it was realized that let's see what happened to that funding. Let's see what happened to those investments. Let's see what happened to those efforts. While looking at the investment in late 90s and 80s and 70s, there was a whole movement, and it started with Millennium Development Goal, and then now, of course, we are trying to fulfill or achieve the SDGs. Then let's see what are the governance challenges. Why we are not doing well in multiple cases in multiple countries. There are three major governance challenges that were identified. One, we are missing the targets. Two, very difficult that, to really ascertain whether we are efficient and effective. 3, accountability question. Now, these were the 3 governance challenges globally accepted that across the world, and more so for the underdeveloped and developing countries, we need to address these challenges. Now, 2005, 2002, and then 5 and 8, there were 3 events that took place, and actually they decided the course of M&E in entire world. One was Monterey Consensus 2002, which basically talked about that let's increase the development assistance. Another was the Paris Declaration 2005, where the countries who came together under the banner of OECD, they said, let's improve the quality of assistance, let's establish a many system to really see what is happening, and let's measure the impacts, let's measure the results. The same was re-emphasized in something called AAA, Accra Action Agenda in 2008, and then say, let's deliver the results. Let's focus on those results. However, we need to also build the capacity. So let's also build the capacities. If you look at the 3 events, they basically set the course of M&E discourse, in international arena. Now, let me go to come back to the M&E. It's a very simple definition that we have been using, and I'll keep on emphasizing that M&E is more than tool, but the definition is basically reflect as a tool. So I'm starting from it as a tool because that's how we have been taking it till now. But let me, move forward. That is just not a tool. It's a broad approach. So M&E basically is a continuous process of collecting and evaluating, analyzing information to know how well a program, a project, or an intervention is being implemented and what they have achieved, whatever they wanted to achieve. It provides information on progress towards achieving stated targets and goals. It provides evidence for necessary mid-course correction. I think one of the most important objective of any M&E system that we may have. It also, and I would say it addresses, but it should address accountability concerns of the stakeholders. And more importantly, it provides feedback to decision maker, what they should be doing going further, what kind of decision they should be taking, what kind of correction making in their decisions. And at the end, and very importantly, it should contribute to the organizational learning knowledge. So these are the broad objectives of any M&E system, be it at the organizational level, be it at the individual level, or be at the international national level. These M&E system must function to achieve either one or more than one such objectives that we just discussed. Let's come to the key principle of M&E. And Umesh, I will ask here, what is the protocol? Should we take the questions at the end, or people can ask questions in between?
Sir, I think the participants can write the question in the chat box, and once the large part of the content is shared, we will take the questions.
Sure, thank you. So just remind me in case there are questions, because I am focusing.
Yes. I will make sure that last at least 5 to 7 minutes in the end are dedicated for the Q&A.
Thank you so much. So let's go to the key principles of M&E, what key principles are. And most of these principles, not all though, I have taken from, there's a famous book, I think all of us, mostly we have used this, the 10 steps to evaluation by the World Bank. So I kind of borrowed some of the principles, and some of the principles I try adding coming from my own experience, and of course, engaging with other stakeholders. One principle, the key basic principle, is that use of information should be identified at every level every level of, whether it's an organization, whether it's a project or intervention, anything. What kind of information they need and how we are going to use it, it should be identified, it should be determined at every level of the intervention or the organization. Number 2, now users of that information should also be identified. So we need information, then who should be using that information, for what purpose, needs to be determined at every level again. And when we talk about the users, it can be within the organization, outside the organization, they can be donors, they can be other stakeholders. And third basic principle is information should move, or rather shared, vertically and horizontally. Now that's where the whole question of bottom-up approach and top-down approach comes up, which I'll discuss a bit later. But any information that is generated by M&E system, it should move vertically. Definitely it does, because most of the systems are top-down by the virtue of the bureaucracy or the kind of the development thinking that we have inherited. Mostly it's a top-down, but idea is it should also be bottom-up. At the same time, it should be shared horizontally among the different layers at any level, be it bottom or top or middle. The fourth, accountability structures need to be specified. What happens when something is not going right, something is going wrong? Who's accountable? I think that question also needs to be settled within the organization or within the organizational ecosystem where there are multiple stakeholders are engaging. Believe me, most of the time when the question of accountability comes, and I'm telling you my own experience working with the organizations, so whenever we go in and try and provide the consultancy for M&E systems, one of the things that when we ask, okay, why do you need M&E system? They'll say for learning and knowledge purpose. Okay, very rarely people say for accountability purpose, because when it comes to the accountability, it's sometime in some organization they also use it for your pay revisions, for performance appraisals, jobs, etc. So more often they say no, it's there for the learning and knowledge, not for the accountabilities per se. But accountability question is one of the basic key principle of M&E. How we use it, that up to the organization, but there has to be some accountability in terms of what we are achieving, whether we are achieving what we intended to or not. And next, very importantly, and I think I'll come back to these points later on at some point of time, but organization and its functionaries need to own it. It's just not there for the sake of process. It's just not there for the sake of formality. They need to own it, meaning they need to really be using it for the internal decision making. Whatever the M&E findings, data, system, whatever it is there, they need to be using it and therefore taking responsibility. So I think these are important principles or rather key building blocks of M&E. As I said, I have borrowed a few from the 10-step of evaluation book, a very famous book, beginners, very important book for the beginners, by the World Bank. Now, whenever we talk about monitoring, believe me, it's not new. Monitoring has always been around, by the way. Let's not say, okay, everything about the monitoring started, right after the concept of MDGs arrived. So everybody started talking about, United Nations started talking about, OECD started talking about. Monitoring was always there. And if I can share you one of the example in India, when we were doing school, I still remember during my schooling days, and I'm the product of the government schools, and now the private education is everywhere. So I used to study in a government school, and one fine day, a vehicle comes and stops at the school, looking at the color and looking at this, the vehicle that we used to understand, okay, somebody from the government has come. The person will come down immediately from the vehicle, run to the cabin of the headmaster or the teacher's room. The first thing that the person will do is to check who has come, the attendance of the teacher, and who hasn't come. And then, tally that number with the people present there in the school. The second thing he or she would do is immediately run to some of the classrooms and will ask the students what 2 into 2 is, what is 4 plus 7. And if the students give correct answer, teachers feel, relaxed. If the students do not give the correct answers, they start trembling. Now, the point is that even, decades ago, there was a monitoring. It's just not that we are inventing something new. Yes, but that was something different. What more often we call traditional monitoring or implementation monitoring. It used to focus on means, strategies, and processes, mostly limiting to physical targets and outputs. But I think now, if you see, we are going beyond this. So if I just, put things in perspective, how the traditional monitoring used to take place, how the implementational monitoring used to take place. There are inputs, we all know, there are activities, there will be some outputs, and we used to wait, let the impact come. Let's see the results are achieved or not. So for inputs, very famous tool, of course, it's very important also, is expenditure tracking, that most of the, whether it's a government or non-government organization, whether it's a, your personal project or it's a common project, everybody, maintain, a documents of expenditure tracking. Activity, just like the example I gave, for the activities, whether they are happening or not, whether the outputs are being generated or not, there were the random visits, there were, the audits that still happens. So these were some of the tools of traditional monitoring, which we call implementation monitoring. This has always been around. You go decades back, you go century back, you will always find, in our history, you find that several kings used to change their, appearance, and secretly used to go and visit the empire or the capital and see how the people are doing, what kind of problem they are facing. These are all form of monitoring what is happening. But later on, I think there's something that realized that, okay, let's not wait for the impact just after producing the output, because that's it's a long way. I mean, if I give you an example, that if you train somebody, okay, if you train the teachers in a school in order to improve the education delivery or improve the learning outcomes of the kids, it's not prudent that we have to wait for entire year to see whether the kids have improved or not. Basically, after the training, the teachers, I think we have to see in between what are the initial results that they are coming up. If they are okay on the track, then yes, we are sure that, okay, impacts can be measured, impacts can be achieved. So the idea is, let's not wait for, impact to really appear. Let's also go in between and see whether those initial results are there or not. So we call them outcomes. And in development literature, in the many literature, we call it missing middle, which was missing in the traditional form of monitoring. So the new form of monitoring that we are talking about now is that let's not stop at outputs. Let's not do just activity and wait for the impact to happen. Let's also visit fields, talk to people, and find out, are there pre-impact conditions available, or are they being observed or not? Those we call outcomes. We can divide the outcomes into multiple, types. The very famous types that most of the organizations use is like initial, intermediate, and mature outcome. So, for example, if we have trained the teachers, the first thing we need to see, okay, so number of teachers trained, number of sessions taken, number of trainings organized, that could be the output. But at the end of the academic year, when we have the results, in between, I think we can see, are students engaging with the teachers? Have teachers changed their pedagogical, style? That is the first initial outcome. Because of the training, they have changed the way they used to teach. And students have been, they have started engaging with the teachers. Okay. Second could be, some pedagogical innovations have been done, whether the periodical test, monthly, bi-monthly, weekly, the students are improving. Okay, intermediate maybe. Third could be, okay, because of that, absenteeism has come down in the particular academic session. That could be mature outcome, because now students are enjoying. And okay, at the end of the academic year, you see the learning has improved. the point is that missing middle was, I think, was identified as one of the problem in development literature, that why we are not achieving what we want to achieve at the end of the project, at the end of the intervention, simply because we stop at activities and output and wait for the impact. So the new focus is something called results monitoring, where we focus on outcomes, which is we call pre-impact kind of conditions, the different kinds of outcome. And the entire thing is now, if you look at the monitoring, is basically implementation monitoring plus results monitoring. So that we, in some cases, we call results-based monitoring as well. So it's not only traditional monitoring that is important, it is necessary, it has to be there. At the same time, we need to, take our focus, shift our focus on missing middle, which is the outcomes or pre-impact, ladders or milestones, which we call results monitoring. So in a nutshell, this is how the monitoring M&E is being perceived and is being taken forward in terms of as a tool or as a method. Okay, now I'm moving towards understanding how M&E make different sense to different stakeholders. And it is very important, no matter which side we are, if we are implementers, we need to understand how donors, and I'm taking these two important stakeholders because, there's still, and I'm very careful in making this statement, still, in most of the cases, as per my experience, the last 8-9 years working in M&E system, is still it is donor driven. So if there's a requirement from the donor, we set up the system and we try and supply that information and whatever it is to the donors, as long as it ticks the box. But yes, having said this, not that everyone have a M&E system just because donors want it. I think we are moving towards an ecosystem where M&E is felt one of the integral need of the organization, which is a welcome move, and I think which is also encouraging for the professional in M&E system. So I'm taking these two important, there are multiple stakeholders in every project, every intervention, every organization, but these two are important. So I'm just focusing on these two. How M&E make different sense to different stakeholders. If you come to implementer, and this is just not everything, this is just, few points which are very, really important for M&E, I'm highlighting those. So for implementers, M&E provides a snapshot of the progress against the target, what we want to use, where we want to achieve, what we want to achieve, at what scale we want to achieve, okay, and for whom. So basically, it's a progress against the targets that we decide. That is one. Second is the monitoring and accountability of the staff as well. I said this, while accountability of the staff is still a tricky point, though, not many organizations really accept this or rather internalize this, but yes, it does provide a space for the monitoring and accountability of the staff alongside of or along with the monitoring of the program. Third, operational improvements, which is one of the key principles of the M&E as well, the course corrections, the mid-course corrections, if anything is going wrong, because you're getting, continuous information through M&E system, you can make the course corrections. So that is how implementers use M&E. And fourth, definitely for internal learning and knowledge. So these are four important aspects that, that is how implementers make sense of M&E. These are not all, there may be others as well, but these are the major ones that more often implementers, adopt and reflect. When you go to the donors, things may be different. The donors use M&E findings, including the impact evaluation findings, as a domain knowledge. Okay, they change their strategy, they change their funding pattern based on what is happening. Okay, in some cases, maybe the diplomatic considerations as well, which I will not speak much, but I'm sure for some international donors and organizations, there may be some diplomatic considerations based on, the monitoring and evaluations and final evaluations and impact evaluations, finding, etc. They also use those for the policy advocacy and to influence the policy interventions at the micro, meso and micro level, at the province and at the national level. And finally, they also are interested and use them for policy change. So if you look at the use, the objective behind how they take M&E may be quite different for different stakeholders. And when we are engaged in such a system, we need to really know who is going to use their money for what purpose and how they're going to use it. What are the objective behind using their money or its finding? It helps us, to really take things into perspective. It helps us to anticipate. It helps us to produce the results such a way that it is useful for all the stakeholders. It also helps us to understand what kind of reporting we should be doing. Of course, it goes without saying that I'm not talking here about any kinds of manipulation here. It's just that we understand the intentions, we understand the objective, accordingly we gear up. Any questions till now? I think I'm probably, if there are any questions, Umesh, I can take. Otherwise, I'm probably might be moving too fast.
I think we are doing fine, sir. I think what we'll do is we'll take questions at the end. There is only one question, but I think it will be good if we get that.
Can you take the question now? If there is one question, just let me take that.
Yeah. There's one question.
There's no.
Yeah. So there is a question related to projects on energy and sustainability, right? It talks about main objectives being restriction, carbon intensivity. So how M&E can contribute into controlling the project's low carbon intensivity, and also how basically it helps in effectiveness of renewable energy and related to sustainability domain is what the participant is asking.
Okay, so let me be forthcoming here in the sense that I do not work in energy sector, so I may not be able to respond specifically and how M&E would really contribute towards controlling and the low carbon intensity. But in general, and I think it's an important question. More often we understand that M&E will correct everything. I think this is a big misunderstanding. I have been saying this, and whatever the experience that I have, that M&E provides you information to make decisions. M&E will not make, it won't make dishonest people honest. Number one, M&E will not correct the system itself. M&E will not set the processes in perspective in your organization. It just provides you information. Now, if you do not have a system, internal system, to process that information with the intention, the way they should be processed, and I think M&E will not be effective at all. It will not lead to any kinds of results that probably you might be thinking that just because of M&E system, you can achieve those. So I think we need to be very careful, because M&E just provides you information, right information at the right time, provided you have a nice M&E system in place which gives you information at the interval that you want. So I don't know whether it really can control or the project or control the low carbon intensity, but I can definitely say it can provide you timely intervention, timely information, which your internal decision-making system can internalize and generate action points. On that basis, you can take the decision. So it pretty much depends. And I can give you the example, one after one. You go to, I more often visit New Delhi or Mumbai or wherever, for the M&E review or establishing M&E system. The organizations which have been getting foreign fundings regularly, when I say foreign in the sense of multinational agencies, Ask them what you have done with them any with them any information. I mean, the single answer more often I find is we have got that information, we analyze, put it in the table form, report it to the board. And if you ask how that information is useful for the below, going down in a village where you are working, in a town where we're working, if the staff at the village and the town level has been able to use the M&E and make decision, most of the times we do not get any answer. So that is why, definitely I cannot make a specific comments on energy, which is beyond my purview, beyond my expertise, but I can definitely tell you, it's just, generate information. It is up to your internal organizational structures and readiness, how it uses the information. Yes, you can fix the way you want the information at the frequency, timeline, and definitely you need to have a system that can anticipate those information, they can work on those information and generate action points. So I think this generic answer that I can provide to this query. Okay, any follow-up questions? I think there is an Umesh.
Yeah, there are a few questions, sir. I think, would you want to take questions here, or would you want to like come back to this question?
I think I can take these two questions right away. Then I can move. Yeah.
Okay.
So how regular? Yeah.
There is a question on whether there is evaluation before a project is implemented. There is also a question. There is also a question on how regular monitoring can impact particular evaluation project. There is also a question on how effective M&E is a tool when it comes to funding, when monetary concerns drives largely the issue to improve the livelihood sector. So I think
these are. So I take these and then I'll move forward. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are we doing evaluations before a project is implemented? We don't do the project evaluation, but we definitely do the needs assessment. And that is one kind of evaluation of the needs. We definitely do evaluation based on the existing evidence. So that tells you the what kind of risk is going to be there, whether your assumptions are there, you get your assumptions true or not when you implement a project. So yes, these are some kinds of evaluation or analysis rather we do before the project is implemented. Something what happens, a project is a follow-up project, then the final evaluation of the previous project becomes a needs assessment, appropriate needs assessment or baseline for the project that is coming up. In that case, the evaluation, the final evaluation of the previous project can be very helpful. So there are different kinds of analysis and evaluation that we do before the project. Baseline, needs assessment are the major ones that everybody does it. In terms of how effective monitoring is as a tool when it comes to funding, outcomes and real-time impact, when monetary concerns drives largely the issue to improve livelihoods. Okay, I'm not getting the question correctly, but okay, if I have understood the question properly, well, it is an effective tool when it comes to funding. When it comes to real-time, I don't think there's nothing called real-time impact, but yeah, real-time progress that we make. Yeah, you can call it initial outcome, early outcome. It is important. It is also important that how we can use the resources efficiently, so the monetary consensus are also taken care of. But it is, everything can happen if you give, the lever of using that information for the local planning by the local stakeholders. More often what we have found that because of the monetary concerns or budgetary concerns, decisions are taken at the top without taking into account the basic efficiency and in the concerns of the resources or the needs of the people. So it depends that you can get the real-time information. You can really get what you intend to within your budgetary concerns, provided who is deciding those concerns, who is identifying, and who is taking decisions, on whose behalf. more often in a top-down design, if these are done at the top level, somewhere at the district, province, or at the national level, I think there are ample evidence that such M&E practices do not really yield the desired results. That is, I think it's just not a secret, it's out there. So it can be an effective tool, provided you get it right, that who should be deciding what should be done at which level using the information that you may have. How regular M&E monitoring in M&E impact a particular evaluation project? Well, it depends on you how regular monitoring you want to have in your project. Sometimes it's depends on the context and the needs. Sometimes you have a very strong MIS system, you generate weekly information, and therefore you generate weekly action points. Sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly. So in terms of frequency, we don't know. So how regular, it basically decided by your project team, your donors, how regular you really need to put in place the monitoring systems in the information that you want. Yes, it does impact a particular evaluation project. It does, because you already have that information in your hand, which you can use to decide, okay, what kind of information they have generated, how they have used it, what kind of decision they have taken using that information, whether the information is lying unused, or whether it's just used for the, for the directors and the board and the members of the board to really review and send some action points down, rather than generating or creating a learning environment at every level of organization. So I think, again, frequency depends on your project and the informational needs, and whether it's impact a particular evaluation project, it does, but then you need to see what people have done to that information within that project or within that organization. I think I'll go ahead and then probably we'll come to other questions later, Umesh. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think that is a great idea.
Okay. So just make sure that just write down somewhere that I do not miss any question. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm noting the questions.
Okay. Thank you. Let me come to the organizational issues around the M&E. So we have talked about how different stakeholders can take or may take M&E, how it can make different sense to them. Let me come to the organizational issues around M&E. What are the organizational issues? Now, this, I think I already mentioned. And if you ask most means what, I may not be able to give you the number, okay? But looking at the literature, looking at my own experience, if I can tell you that every year, probably here at IRMA, where I'm working, we are involved in around 7 to 8 projects every year, visiting around 50 to 60 villages in India, interacting with multiple stakeholders at a time. Many,
request all the participants to please mute themselves. I think it will be good for all of us to follow this strictly. Please make sure that you are muted.
So based on that experience, and when you see the profile of organizations that we more often visit, they include non-government organizations at the very micro level, to the government at the provincial and at the national level, and also in some cases multilateral agencies like UN and World Bank. If you look at those systems, they are created, generated, designed, and used because there are tick boxes. I mean, I can tell you one of example, which is best practice, by the way, and I'm not being diplomatic here, because you need to really fix the accountability. So World Bank disbursed money based on their disbursement linked indicator called DLI. So if you have not achieved certain results, they will not give you the money. And that is how the new, last couple of years we have been seeing that is how they release money to the state government, to the central governments and other stakeholders. So, and when we really look at those projects, so okay, that is the requirement. So you have to have a mini system, you have to evaluate this. But then since donor wants, you check the box, you tick the box, provide those reports and finding to the donors so that the money comes. And the moment you say, okay, how you have used that? Can you just show how this particular many findings or evaluation findings have been used in your organization, in your functioning? And that's where the disappointments come. So I think it's very important, and that's where I always say that M&E is just not a tool or method, it's a movement. We need to really make people aware that it is for their own good, it is for their own benefit. One of the famous example that more often I tell in my classes, which I have gone through, this was my first job after my PhD in a non-government organization. I was given a migration related project where the people who migrated from one place to another, they were to form a support group, and they were to be trained in terms of how they can claim their social security benefits. In that project, I suggested the head of the organization, the NGO, he was the executive director, that, sir, we need to have every Monday morning review meetings, because what is happening in the last week, we should also know, and how we are planning the next week. This is called MMMM, Monday morning meeting. Nowadays, I think it's a practice in the private sector anyway. They do the review every week. So he said, yeah, it's a good idea, let's start. So we started this Monday morning meetings because I recommended. I was enthusiastic, new PhD, not much experience. I said, let's make the difference. And the meetings started. You know, within a month, everybody in the organization was my enemy, saying, why you started this? We were doing fine, we were fine. Now every week we have to compile the information, we have to put it together, we have to tell the director what we have achieved, we have to tell the director what we are going to achieve next. We don't want that frequent kind of, questioning and monitoring. Well, we may have a monitoring systems, and we can tick the box what donor wants. But if we do not use those information for our well-being, for the well-being of the program, and therefore the well-being of the beneficiaries, I don't think we are achieving the objectives, the key principles of M&E. So this is one of the concerns, and these are the issues that around the organizations needs to be resolved. More often, again, this is our experience, more often senior officers on M&E emphasize more than the lower level functionaries. Now, one of the reasons could be the lack of capacity, lack of understanding about the M&E, because people think that if there is an information on my performance, which basically is the program performance, because I'm supposed to deliver, so it becomes also information on my performance. It is not good to present every, now and then to the leadership. So lower level functionaries are a bit kind of, let's not, use, M&E more often, or the information that we need more often, because it might also affect my job, my performance here. So we have seen that the senior officers, they appreciate M&E more. They want to have a M&E system in place. They want to use the information, but still lower level functionaries, maybe because of the lack of awareness or orientation or misconception around M&E, they still struggle to appreciate M&E systems. This, I think I have mentioned partially earlier, that M&E is used more for the reporting than the learning, though they said it's for learning. If you look at the documentation, particularly the knowledge documentation within the organizations, well, some organizations do it well, but multiple organizations, particularly the grassroots organizations, they do not have a very strong knowledge documentation, so that the learnings that are coming out of M&E can also be transported to other regions, to other teams, and to future when similar efforts are being replicated. So though in some cases they call it not M&E, they call it MEL. They use L, learning word, with M&E, but still, while they might learn at a time when they get the information, they know what is happening, but whether it is documented properly for the future reference, for the other organizations to use it is still worrisome. It's not prevalent. So for example, if you look at, you look at wherever you are working, how many of us really do the process documentation, which is one of the important source of process learning, process monitoring, etc. Many organizations they do not have a process documentation. This is implement the program or intervention, okay, take information on interval, and then use it whichever way they want to use it. But when they want to replicate themselves by someone else within the same organization but different team, such process documentation, knowledge documentation are missing. So it is more than reporting. So once you have that many information coming in, put it in a format, send it to the donor, send it to the leadership, and then reporting is done. On that basis, maybe some action points are generated. That's it. But whether the learning happens, whether people internalize what is to be done and what is to be avoided is still a question mark, particularly in the at the level of the grassroots organizations, those who work in the very micro level. And last, functionaries avoid talking about accountability. I think I have already touched upon this point, so I will really not talk about that again. Okay, now we come to enhancing the use of M&E, how we should enhance, how we should improve the usability of M&E. This is new focus. Yesterday only we had a webinar organized by Sri Lanka Evaluation Association and APR, where we had a panel discussion on enhancing. One of the point was also enhancing the usability, making it localized, how we can localize the M&E. So I think that's one of the point that is coming up, one of the discussion thread that is taking place, that how we should make M&E more user-friendly at the local level, at the very village level, the lowest unit wherever the intervention is being implemented, whether it's a village or town or whatever it is. And that's where I think that I began with this statement that is, yeah, it's not a toolbox or it's not a method. It's more than that. It's an approach. It's, I think, a very integral part of organizational ecosystem. It's an integral part of any program design. So the primary objective of M&E is to use it, not to report it. So if we have to use it, we have to enhance the usability, and that can be done by doing few things. I think that's a starting, that M&E finding should be actionable. Okay. Number two, develop accountability at every level. Accountability does not mean take away somebody's job when things are not happening. Accountability also means that they take ownership and take the corrective measures on time. And third, very importantly, decentralize the use of MIS, Management Information System. Most of the interventions in organizations, they do have MIS system, internal MIS system. Now, when I say decentralize, the mindsets, if you look at the mindset still, and I think I mentioned this earlier a bit, if we have the MIS, meaning the data needs to be generated and it needs to be sent to the top. And if you question that, okay, data goes to top, fine, they do some analysis, they send back some action points, they might be using it for the reporting, they might be using it for writing the reports, writing newspaper articles, telling government what is happening. But then you collect the data from the local and intermediary levels. Are those local teams are really planning their activities based on the data they feed in the MIS system? And not to our surprise, I think that's probably we realize that many of the times the answer is in negative. I give you one example. In India, I was kind of evaluating some of the development programs for the government of India. and visiting, and this is just a 1 year back, just right after when the COVID relaxed a bit, we had a couple of projects and we made the field visits in some of the states in India, including Gujarat, where I'm now currently working. We went to education department and start, we're talking to the district level education officers and then the schools at the village level. And they have a fantastic MIS system, very sophisticated. They collect the data every day. They put it in the app. The data goes from that level to the block, which is between the district and village, the intermediary unit. Then there is a district, then there is a province, then there is a national government. All these levels, same data without any modification and manipulation goes to top. I started inquiring with all level, the village, the block, the district, province, definitely, and national. I asked that, okay, you generate the data. How do you use it? The 3 level at the down, so district, a village, block, and district. Okay, not so surprised though, but of course, it was a bit shocking that many of them said, we collect the data, we put it in the app, we maintain the MIS so that the national capital or the provincial capital, they can use it for their decision making. Now, why can't a school use the same data for their own planning, that if the absenteeism rate is for the particular standard is say 10%, why can't we make sure that the next year it can come down to 5% or whatever number? If dropout is say 7 to 8% at the 8th standard or 5th standard, whatever the education level is, why can't we plan using the same data that the next year we will bring down by 2%? Now so decentralizing, now we ask whether you are not using it or you are not allowed to use. Answers were mixed and both answers were correct. They are not using for one. Second, there are always top-down instruction what to do. How should they plan? How should they plan? How should they spend money? What they should achieve? So yes, neither they are doing for themselves within the resources and the power they have, nor they are being instructed from the top that you should be doing this. So I think there's a need to decentralize the use of MIS, giving rights and power and resources at every level that they should be planning using the same data on the basis the macro level policy decisions are being made. So I think if we do that, automatically, we are enhancing the usability of M&E. Okay, and that also contributes to the accountability, because when you give those planning and execution power to the lowest level, we can hold them responsible, we hold them accountable, whether they, given that the support was given, whether they have been able to achieve the results or not. So I think these are simpler, basic points, how we can enhance the usability. And lastly, and very importantly, M&E should also strengthen the feedback mechanism of the organization. I'll just in the next slide talk about what is the feedback mechanism in any organization. So if you look at this is just I don't know, it may be appropriate for all the countries that the participants are here. These are hypothetical labels. So maybe field means for you the lowest, and there may be regions, and there is a headquarter. Headquarter could be at either the provincial level or at the national level. Usually what is the feedback system? It mostly top down, we do understand. So what happens, the field, they send the progress reports. At the regional level, they are synthesize it, okay, and they consolidate and send it to HQ, wherever it is. On that, it's a very normal practice. It's a very common practice. And on that basis, there are things to do. They are sent back to the bottom. That, okay, you need to do this. Okay, I think that's probably it's a very usual way of working in any organizational setup, be it government or non-government. Then you have a mini system, of course, it collects the data. On that basis, the reports are sent. So there's things to do that come down from top to bottom. They are basically the feedbacks, okay, on the basis of the progress that they have made, on the progress that they have reported. A feedback loop is complete when the feedback also goes up, right? If it comes down on what has been achieved and what not has been achieved, the feedback also should go up, what works and what doesn't. So if the policy level instructions, the program design happen at the top, the feedback should also be shot from the bottom, what works and what doesn't, rather than what happened and what they achieved and what they didn't, which anyway, they do it. So then another is what we were talking about, the horizontal sharing and planning, okay, at every level. So if you see the current system of organizational feedback system, we do have a top down, which means the feedback's coming down, but rarely, and I'm not making a sweeping statement here, but rarely we found that there is a complete feedback. Most of the time, these horizontal sharing and feedback going from bottom to top doesn't exist. So if that doesn't exist, the efficacy of monitoring system, can be questioned. And you can usually find out that the system is top down, which works from one direction, but it doesn't work from the other direction. So this is what the organizational feedback system is. If we have a complete feedback loop, your M&E system can be effective, and you can enhance the usability of M&E system. Now, this is the last part of my talk here. These are the troubling binaries, and as I said, that there's a lot of debate going around the M&E systems, and this is one. In fact, this we discussed yesterday. I'm not sure how many of you part of that webinar, but I did make in that webinar, I did make those references. I'm coming to that particular those binaries that are actually troubling us. These binaries are, let me just okay, theory versus practical. And I'm sure many of you might be struggling with that, or studying, right? Or discussing internally. Macro versus micro. This is for a many system. Top down, bottom up, pretty much it is there in the discussions. Data oriented, meaning MIS, versus people oriented, meaning enhancing the usability so that people can use it. They can feel empowered. Standards or standardization versus innovations. Now these are binaries. If you ask me or anybody, is it possible that M&E is either 0 or 1? Because binary is all about 0 or 1, whether they exist or not. No, they are not. We can find a balance. But believe me, and this is my recent experience, people have started questioning even balance. They say being balanced means being diplomatic. So if there's a question of top down versus bottom up, okay, if the question of whether M&E is completely data oriented, meaning, of course, it is data oriented. Every M&E system needs data or information, right? Then who uses it? Who is powerful having that information, okay, and therefore using it? Whether the people at the local level, the beneficiary, the citizens are empowered enough to use the data and make their decisions. So I think it's not about that we need to be diplomatic and keep a balance, that no, we need data, we also need people orientation, okay? They need to have power to use the data. The question that are coming up, particularly from the grassroots side, that let's not be diplomatic anymore. Let's shift the balance from theory to practical, from macro to micro. Let's make it so friendly that even one village mobilizer, which is part of a project in a village, who's hardly literate, is able to make use of M&E. Can you remove the jargons? Can you remove, sophisticated tables and, designs, big theory of change which they are not able to understand? Of course, it is important to have a theory of change. But can you make it so easy that even at the micro level, people are able to understand, internalize, and use it. So can we give more space for people to make innovations, or it's just these are frameworks and tables and so they're so standard that nobody can make changes? Do we give that freedom to, again, somebody who's in the town or the village, use that M&E system, modify a bit or more? We don't know. So what we have done, we started with theory, macro, top-down, data, standardization. Then there was a need for being practical, using it at the micro level, making it bottom up, making it people-oriented, making them powerful. They should feel empowered. They should use it, providing more space for innovations. Now, these were the demands. More often, we see the system striking a balance between these two. Now, some of us have started questioning why to create the balance. I am completely aware that many of you will disagree with me, but my job is to just tell you what is coming up, what is people are now, they're talking, or a section of the development practitioners have started talking and new debate. Let's not strike a balance, go other side, from theory to practical, from macro to micro, from top down to bottom up, from data to people oriented, from standardization to innovations. Well, we cannot go to again from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. Let's not, again, I think probably it will be difficult for any organization to completely shift the paradigm of M&E. But it is up to us whether we strike a fine balance in some binaries, some relations, and in some relations we give more power, more consideration to other side. So these are troubling binaries. There's no fixed answer for any of these. Probably depends on the need. I mean, that's the most safest and diplomatic answer which I'm trying to give, based on the needs, based on what is going to work. In your case, one can really strike that balance, or rather than striking the balance, go any other side and make best use of M&E. But these binaries will trouble us for some time, as long as we do not get settled on what we want to do.
No.
So I stop here, and I think I may have 15 more minutes, Umesh, for the question answer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 16 precisely. So what
Okay.
we'll do is take few questions in the order that they came, and I think we'll start with the question that I think we covered the how regular monitoring impact particular evaluation of the project, right?
I think yes.
Yeah. So I think the next question is about the culture of creating a culture of M&E, especially in the government organization. I think the participant is talking about there is inherent inertia and in a way a resistance for monitoring and evidence. So I think we'll start with that and maybe take later.
Okay, I think it's yes, it's a difficult question, frankly, to answer, that how we create a culture of M&E in the government system, where mostly in the government system, which I have been talking about, I think it's easy to create that culture in non-government systems, but in government system, they think as a mechanism of punishing them if you have a strong M&E system, of holding them accountable, which I was talking about earlier. There is a long solution, long drawn solution, and there is probably short term solution that we can think of. The long drawn solution is that let's do not overimpose or superimpose the M&E on anything. Let's make it part of our basic training, basic education system. And I think that is where there's particularly the consortium that I'm part of, and the API is leading the consortium. We have been saying that the M&E should be part of all the humanities and social sciences courses, including all other technical engineering courses, where when we get the basic education, and M&E not necessary in the forms of the framework that we study, M&E in the sense of the evaluability approach that needs to be, provided in the form of formal education. So it's a long drawn, long haul kind of solution where our basic higher education system has, the elements of M&E in different ways, in different contexts. And whoever comes and join, whether it's a government or non-government, has that, inbuilt in the thinking process, because that's what the part of the education. But that's a long drawn. I mean, it'll take decades to really do that, but it's necessary, rather than, superimposing M&E on somebody that this is what, is there and you should be doing it because we want to monitor you. The moment you tell you we want to monitor you, everybody gets sensitive, everybody gets, alerted, whether even in the case for us who understand M&E better, somebody say, we want to monitor you, we get immediately, sensitive. So I think the second is, yes, the continuous push from the top in the inbuilt M&E in their capacity building program could be another approach, how to create a culture of conducive M&E in the government. Now, the push from the top, I have been seeing it, particularly in the case of India, for example, all the state governments have instructions to achieve the SDGs. And to my knowledge, all the state governments have a committee under either the special secretary or chief secretaries at the top level to review the progress of the SDGs, and therefore in their instructions they more often emphasize on evaluations, etc., and continuous monitoring, etc. So yes, there is a push from the top. At least I can talk about India, and not sure about the other country. But then we need to make sure that these M&E. So, for example, I was talking about the education department for the project that I mentioned earlier. That why can't you have M&E as a part of in your teachers training module? So teachers training module are all about what they teach to students. Can't you have M&E also understanding what they should be performing, what they should be working, how they should be working, how they should measure their success, etc. So I think there's another route that we should integrate this M&E in their regular capacity building calendar. I do not really think if there's anything other than these two, because it's very difficult to really change the behavior of the government, that what we call development bureaucracy, which has been there for long.
Yeah.
Can you move to the next question?
Yes, sir. Yes, I think the next question is about the effective communication of the results, especially when the results are not in the favorable of the program, and how do we communicate that, and how do we put that on the table?
Okay, so basically you are asking how diplomatically we can.
What is the most effective way? What is the most effective way of also establishing those results? And I mean,
when the results are not favorable. Yes, I got the point. When results are not favorable. Well, I think, okay, so, well, pretty much depends on how we write it. I personally think, and I think I can freely speak on the behalf of all M&E professionals, please write without compromising the truth. I think truth needs to be spoken and written. Well, we can definitely avoid the language such as failure, such as incompetence, such as all sort of things in our writing, in our recommendations, in our findings, because please remember, I think to me is very clear that one of the objective of M&E is not really about deciding what was success and what was a failed attempt or failure, is mostly about how to improve. And if that is the language, how to improve, and which is coming up in your writing and explaining the results, I think you are telling the truth. At the same time, probably you are not hurting the prospects of you getting funding again, and also not making your stakeholders, particularly the donors or the government, angry. My simple message is, which we usually, and that's something I can safely claim on the behalf of all M&E professionals, we should not compromise on truth, but we should definitely be looking at the language we are using. So rather than really declaring something worst or fail or incompetent, I think we just need to tell how we can improve it. Then it is depend on your individual writing and communication skill, how you communicate this.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sham. I think we have few questions on the binaries. I think one is, can you explain outcome monitoring and impact monitoring? The other is, can you explain audit and evaluation? So how do you look toward these two binaries, Dr. Sham?
Okay, so the first thing is about the outcome. I think monitoring can happen for the outcome. Impact is something that takes a lot of time too. You can assess the impact, you can evaluate. But mostly the results monitoring is focused on outcomes monitoring, which are like pre-results circumstances, pre-results milestone. Although results are also about the impact, but in all real sense, in all practical sense, the results monitoring limits to the outcome monitoring. Impact, the way I understand, happens sometime after a few years of the intervention, and intervention is over. So you wait for a couple of years, particularly social development sector. I don't think impact happens right after you have concluded the project. You have to give some time in between 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, depends on what you're doing. And then we look at the impact. Yes, we do some bit of assessment, comparing the baseline and end line, which is again a one form of impact, but is mostly outcome assessment. So outcome monitoring is possible. M&E systems suggest outcome monitoring, impact monitoring, because outcome are the preconditions of impact, the kind of milestones that really indicate whether we are on path to achieve impact or not. But that is how we call it outcome monitoring or results monitoring. But I think impact are assessed rather than monitored. And the next binary is what, Umesh? What was that?
It is about audit and evaluations.
Okay, audit is basically checklist-based evaluation. Assessment is not evaluation basically. So you just go and see whether things happen or not, whether things are placed in or not. In audit, we do not really look for the relationship between the causal relations between what caused or who caused what, right? Or what factor caused whatever the result that we're achieving. In evaluation, we look for those causal relations, the responsible factor. In audit, mostly we limit to what exists, what doesn't, what is being done and what isn't being being done. So audit is mostly about the checklist-based kind of assessment, trying and visiting and finding out who is doing what. But evaluation is mostly finding the causal relations. If something has happened, why that has happened, what factor caused it. So there's a tremendous difference between these two. I mean, they do not really, there's no similarity between these two. Those are completely two different tools.
Yes, and so there is one question on how we can A, recognize, and B, prevent the subjective view or bias thinking when we developed evaluation finding.
Okay, if you ask me the best, that's what I say, see, no system, including M&E, no matter how sophisticated system is, no system can convert dishonest people into honest people. So that's not possible. That's not possible. Yes, you can address bias. That's what I'm saying. Any M&E system or evaluation can address biasness, but not dishonesty. So we need to be very careful. Sometimes people know that evidence indicates something else, but just because we are dishonest, we do not regard the evidence. We keep on saying something else. So I don't think any system can tackle that. Okay, what we can do, we can really, address the biasness, which is different from dishonesty. The best way is, to me, include those biased, assumptions in your study evaluation. If the evidence support those biased assumptions, they become then fact. They are no more biasness. And if the evidence rejects those biased assumptions, they remain biasness. So you know that this is biased and this is not. So if you have certain biased assumptions or somebody else has, and if you have a space, include them as an hypothesis in your evaluation, test them. Okay, if they remain true, they are no more biases, they are fact. If they do not get any backing from the evidence, they remain as a bias, and you are know what to do and how to deal with them.
Yeah, so thank you. I think Professor Sham, you will love this question. I think it is really a great question for you. The question reads, what is the role of an academician in evaluation, and what is the ongoing debates on evaluation in the literature among the academician? And I just want to inform all the audience that Dr. Sham is also a very well-known thought leader in this domain. He is also an academician. So to you, sir.
Okay. This question is, can I look so that I can read it completely? Can you just help me?
Yeah, the question reads, what is the role of an academician in evaluation?
Oh, yeah, I got it. By Sabine, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, well, now I need to really be defending my turf is, what is the role of the, I think, role of academician in evaluation in a very simpler form is to develop the framework through which evaluations are carried out, number one. Number two, start asking difficult questions. Implementers do. I am definitely aware that implementers also, the practitioners also ask tough questions. But I think academicians are known for starting a debate, taking it forward, asking questions as multiple level. Therefore, if we are asking questions about the usability of M&E or localizing it, it is coming, definitely there's a contribution from all the sides. So the role of the academician is, I would say, trying out, testing, formulating the frameworks, initiating the debates, and more importantly, integrated with the education system. Now, if we integrate with the education system, no matter the student become evaluator or an engineer, and that's what I said earlier, that evaluability approach, habit of asking tough questions, habit of using evidence as a base to make opinion, informed decision, I think that goes a long way. So that's how the role of academician is important in my view. What are the ongoing debates on evaluation in the literature among the academicians? I think I have just indicated development evaluation, the effectiveness, the understanding about the results, the capacity building. These were the debates during the first decades of this century and the second decade, most of it. Now we are moving towards, so those debates are still there, by the way, in the Forum of Development Evaluation, International Development Forum. Now we are a bit moving and asking more questions in terms of the adaptation of M&E, the people's empowerment, whether they are empowered enough to use M&E, and that's where the point that I brought today about the usability and localizing M&E. So I think these are newer forms of debates that are coming up. Who owns data? Who has ownership on information? It's a big question which was there even earlier and is still now going on, because that defines whether the system is top-down or bottom-up. And anybody who owns information, who keeps information, is a powerful person. So I think those debates are still there in academic circle. Umesh.
Thank you so much. Sir, there is, I think we'll take the last question. In a sense, the last question talks about, has there been any behavioral experiment in inculcating this culture of evidence and this culture of M&E and accountability? The participant has asked only about the government system, but I am broadening the scope of it. Has there been any behavioral experiment?
There are.
Yeah.
There are. I can actually refer a couple of studies later on. I can email and then you can share with the participants. There are few, not many, but there are studies on behavioral aspect of adaptation of M&E. One of the study talks about if you start counting the mistakes of the employees of government or non-government, then the number of mistakes come down. However, the acceptance of M&E goes down. So it says one of the experiment that was carried out. So there are a couple of behavioral studies. We need to do multiple behavioral studies on M&E adaptation. We don't have many, and I can share with you, we have initiated one in Jharkhand where I am part of it. It is a 3-year-long study. Let's see how it comes. This is still first year going on, but we do not have multiple studies, that for sure. But I can definitely share a couple of studies which I know, and then Umesh, you can share with the participants.
Yes, sir, I'm certainly sure. Sir, it will be great if you can stop share screen now, and I
Oh, yeah,
want
sure.
you to, yeah, I want to see the video stream, and I on behalf of all the participants and all the organizing team, we want to thank you for a wonderful session. I think my learnings from this has been the set of binaries that you spoke about, and how this was very rightly put. So I think with that, we really want to thank you for the wonderful session. What we have is, I think we covered most of the questions, but due to paucity of time, my first job as a moderator to keep check on time. So what we'll do is we will forward this question to you, Dr. Shyam, and I assure the participants that you will get answers to this question. We will share it with you, the answers and all the resources, all the links that you shared, Dr. Shyam, will be shared with the participants.
So I'll share some of the experimental studies that have been done on MLE.
Sure. And we are also planning to share the slides with the participants.
Sure.
So that will be also communicated. With this, I think we'll stop here for our first session. And thank you so much for joining us, taking out the time, Dr. Shyam.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. I enjoyed a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. I have few instructions for the participants. I think in this session, we have observed that there were a couple of disturbance due to audio. I think that will happen, but request you all to A, ensure that you are muted, B, try to attend all the sessions as much as possible, because the certificate will be given to all those who will complete the 6 session successfully. What we will be doing now is we will be taking a few minutes break, to be precise, 5 minutes break. The room will be open. Request you to, maybe if you want, you can stretch. And what we'll do is we'll put some music, and we'll come back at 10:50. It will come back in 3 minutes for our second session.